Some are saying the Baylor Bears are beating out the Texas Longhorns, the A&M Aggies, and the SMU Mustangs to be the best college football team in Texas in 2025. Let's get Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and The Cam Show, powered by Rogue Media Sports Network on YouTube. Appreciate you making it your first listen today and every day. We will try to see and talk about who is calling the Baylor Bears probably the best football team in Texas coming up in 2025. Plus, I joined Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 for a little crossover action. We talked about Brett Yormark taking out the SEC bias and fighting for the Big 12's honor, and how Baylor's gotten hosed in the past in some of these matchups. And we'll take a look at the conference state of basketball and how Baylor's blowout losses have kind of helped in the decline of this conference, albeit a small one. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. Looking at who will be the best in 2025. That's what we're going to be doing for the next couple months, right? That's what we do all off season, and all the Texas teams are in the off season now. And this is what goes beyond conferences. Being the best in the Big 12 is a great thing. Being the best in the SEC is a great thing. Being in the college football playoffs, it's all great, right? But there is some part of us still that just like to have the bragging rights around the office, around the campus, around your school, your place of business, your church. So who's going to be the best team in Texas? We can split it up into all the conferences we want, but who's the best team in Texas? Well, there are two teams that made the college football playoff last year, right? SMU and UT. There's another team in Texas Tech that has one of the great transfer portal classes in the history of Earth ever. At TCU liked the momentum they had at the end of the season. Rice will finish last. And, everyone in between. Oh, yeah, A&M. They like their quarterback. And I like Micah Hudson, so that's a good pickup for them. Concepcion, too. But who is going to be the best in Texas? Mike Craven of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, one of my favorite writers that covers the sport in the state, did his two early top five, or actually ranked all of them, but specifically the top five, ranked all the teams, Division I football teams in Texas. And who came out on top? But you guessed it, the Texas Longhorns. UT comes out on top even the same day that Quinn Ewers declares for the NFL draft. They like what they've got with Arch Manning, and there's certainly something to build off of with back-to-back playoff appearances. Sure, absolutely. But second place is what stunned everybody. The Baylor Bears coming in at number 2. And there were certainly people in the comment section of it saying Baylor should be number 1. Bold. But Mike Craven thought he was going bold with putting Baylor at number 2 as well. He says Dave Aranda entered the 2024 season, I think he meant to say, on the hottest seat in Texas. He'll enter 2025 with a true Big 12 contender, thanks to the return of quarterback Sawyer Robertson and running back Bryson Washington. Bears ended the 24 regular season with 6 straight wins, with victories over in-state rivals like Tech and TCU. I remember both those. Remember those very well. If the defense takes another step forward with Aranda on the headset, Baylor is a true CFP contender in a conference that always throws us a surprise. Couldn't have said it any better myself. And Mike, of course, put this out before Baylor finalized its defensive staff, which I think he'll go on to say is pretty good. He'll say Paul Gonzalez, one of the great defensive back coaches in the nation. And Carson Hall, one of the brightest young defensive minds in the country. Here's what he had to say about the Texas Longhorns. Let the Arch Manning era begin on the 40 acres. He'll need new names to step up around him if the Horns want to return to the college football playoff for the third year in a row, however. The offense alone must replace playmakers like Matthew Golden and Jaden Blue, while the offensive and defensive lines are replacing stalwarts such as Kelvin Banks and Vernon Broughton, however you say that, sorry. Longhorns dealt with lost production incredibly well after the 2023 campaign. They got to pull it off again to keep the Horns in the SEC mix. Because, see, here is where you can make the argument that Baylor will end the 25 season as the number one team in Texas. There is a lot of uncertainty with UT. All right? Like, first off, in and of itself, Arch Manning is an uncertainty. I think he's pretty damn good. I think he'll be a good quarterback for them. But there is that uncertainty. It was the same way with Quinn Ewers when he came in, hadn't really taken a ton of meaningful snaps. Obviously, Arch has had to fill in once or twice in non-conference games and some packages here and there. But Quinn Ewers, that was a similar doubt. Like, is this kid going to be the guy? And it took a little bit. But he certainly became the guy at UT. Arch Manning has a higher ceiling, but you put in an uncertain quarterback who hasn't been the guy at the college level before, and you don't know where the weapons are around him. You're replacing a lot. That is a big ask. Whereas that's where Baylor has the advantage. They still need to go out and get another receiver, but your quarterback is back from having a great year this past year, probably the best returning quarterback in the Big 12. I say probably only to appease the masses, but he is the best quarterback returning in the Big 12. Bryson Washington, best returning running back in the Big 12. And Josh Cameron was your best receiver all year. And probably Michael Trigg coming back too, who is one of the biggest matchup nightmares in the entire country, let alone the Big 12 conference. So where UT has potential, Baylor has a bit more of a certainty. And so we know things can snowball on you pretty quickly in the SEC. There's a chance where Mike Craven's doing this list at the end of the year, and Baylor's actually number one. A&M, talk about uncertainty, man. In fact, he says it in there. A&M definitely has a worse roster in year 2 under Mike Elko than they had in year 1, and that is certainly the case. They got a ton of help at the receiver position, which they needed a lot of this past year, and they think they've got their guy at quarterback in Marcel Reed, but A&M, I mean, we kind of say that UT has the uncertainty. A&M certainly does, and SMU takes a step back, and Tech is winning the offseason once again. Tech always wins the offseason, but Baylor's right in there in the mix to be the best team in Texas at the end of this year. And if not, be the most accomplished, right? Rice does come in last, by the way. If you guys need any more ammo to brag on against your, Rice comrades, there it is. UTEP is like third from last. That's great for them. But Baylor absolutely is in that running. And you could make an argument that in terms of what they have coming back, Baylor could be the best team in Texas going into the 2025 season. Just saying. And the college football playoff has to be next because TCU has that. UT has that. That needs to be the next step. And Tech will go on and win the offseason again next year. And we'll go through this entire rigmarole again. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below because I know you have thoughts. Please let me know in the comments how stupid I am, how bright I am, how handsome I am, how cool I am. All right, we're probably getting carried away there, but let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton. 75% of you that are watching at least are not subscribed. Helps us out, helps get better Baylor content and Texas football content to you. Locked on Baylor rolls on. We're going to talk with Drake Toll. I was lucky enough to go on Locked on Big 12, and we're talking a little Brett Yormark and defending against the SEC bias. Hint, the Texas Longhorns come into that one as well. And taking a look at the state of basketball in this conference. Is Baylor actually contributing to the Big 12 being knocked down a peg as the best conference in college basketball? We'll go over that next on Locked on Baylor. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. 200 smacarinos. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with 200 big ones in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. That is Cameron Stewart co-hosting today. He hosts Locked On Baylor. The reason he's here is because he's moderately funny, and I am more handsome than him. We will talk Brett Yormark ripping into the college football ripping into the college football playoff over its officiating crews. Also, Mark Harlan, the Utah AD, went in front of a podium and a microphone and did not say that his school would no longer like to be in the Big 12. Instead, quasi-apologized. There was no I'm sorry, but he walked his comments back from November. And Big 12 basketball, it's kind of collapsing right now. We'll get there as well. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. Cam, Brett Yormark, very unhappy with the officiating of the college football playoff, says that a new standard has to be set. All of this coming from a couple of weeks ago when Arizona State was blatantly screwed. Not just by the targeting call, but then come to find out, we watched the replay, and the game-winning touchdown, the receiver actively uses the turf to catch the football, taking a win away from Arizona State. Not in most cases, you're like, oh, well, the officiating crew doesn't decide a game. But here, when a kid pins a ball against the turf and that should have been incomplete,
literally the winning play,
Arizona State wins, Brett Yormark is on the money.
Yeah. And I think the SEC is starting to learn about not only their double standard, they don't know about that yet, but the double standard of UT within the SEC, which we'll get to that. But I mean, Yormark, the most biting comment on this, or part of this statement that he put out was, what did he say? He was like, "We're looking for just a national level of what we're going to call in these college football playoff games," which is the diplomatic way of saying, "Hey, we need to make sure there's not different rules for the SEC teams than there is for our Big 12 teams." And they did kind of the referees in that game got kind of a bone for a long time for a couple of weeks here, because we all remember the non-targeting call that should have been called. And then we come to see, oh yeah, the touchdown that literally decided the game shouldn't have counted either. It's par for the course, I would say, for a lot of us out there. But you think with the 12-team college football playoff that it is going to be easier for the little guy. And according to ESPN and Tessitore and anyone who had any involvement with this game, there's no littler guy than Arizona State with like the third highest enrollment in the country. Just plucky little Arizona State from that little farmers conference in the Big 12. The 12-team college football playoff was supposed to even the playing field for him. And we have yet to see it. And try as they might, still no SEC team in the national championship game.
Direct quote from Yormark: as a member of the College Football Playoff Management Committee, I have had multiple discussions seeking clarity surrounding the targeting call on Arizona State's final drive of the fourth quarter with Richard Clark. He's told Brett, this is per Brett McMurphy, moving forward, we need to address the CFP officiating to ensure national standards are developed. These standards will be crucial to the CFP's future, and I look forward to discussing them with my fellow committee members when we meet next. He didn't just go after this game. He said the entirety of the college football playoff committee needs to address the entirety of their officiating crew because it's not up to par. Imagine being the top tournament in America, in American collegiate sports, and still not being able to get the damn officials right.
He's like, I just want to talk this through. Just want to make sure we're on the same page. And to go off not just the biggest tournament in America, because it is, but arguably the biggest moneymaker in American sports right now is the 12-team college football playoff. The NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl are a different animal, I guess. But, I mean, really, the 12-team college football playoff challenges that. And so you're going to pour all this money into this, and you are going to spend months and months deciding who gets to get in there from a team standpoint. And we're not even going to be on the same page on what the rules are. Like, we're not even going to get the competent officials for this game. It sucks. And I think this is a buildup. I mean, as most Big 12 fans feel, right? I think this is a buildup from Yormark too, of we went through this whole year of you guys talking about how our conference isn't good enough, and how great the the Big Ten and the SEC are, and how this team with 2 more losses than our team should get in because of X, Y, and Z. And then you're going to pull this crap. Then we actually get out there on the field and we strap on the helmets, we strap them on, and we play a damn good game and should be taking Texas out. And this is what you're going to pull on us. Like it is a buildup of a lot of different things to where Brett Yormark of the Big 12 is just like, you know what? I'm sick of this. Nothing's going to change if I don't call them out anyway. So let's at least try this and see if something's going to change. I doubt it, but it feels like the Big 12 and I guess the ACC as well being treated as second-class citizens in when it comes to college football and specifically the college football playoff. It's BS, man.
Yeah, very so. You see it in the NFL with, remember that Saints pass interference? I mean, we've seen a couple times where a larger market team seems to benefit from a big call. There is bias in everything, whether you like it or not. It's going to be there. And do you think that the Big Ten officiating crew knew that this was mighty Texas of the SEC and the Power 2, the quasi-Power 2, playing against a Big 12 team, and a Big 12 team winning does really nothing for them?
I think they had an idea. Specifically because the other side of the bracket was that Rose Bowl game, which a lot of people thought were the 2 best teams left, right? Ohio State and Oregon. And it was like, oof. Ohio State against Arizona State in the Cotton Bowl in Arlington, Texas. What can we do here? And this goes back to my point of there's not just a double standard for the SEC, but going within that, there's the double standard for Texas. And I think the SEC schools are going to start to figure that out. Remember, we'll take you back to October, the biggest game in the history of college football ever, Georgia versus UT in Austin. A pass interference call on an interception gets overturned because the UT crowd threw bottles onto the field and Sark was big mad. And so that gets turned around. I'll give you a Big 12 example of it. This goes back a bit, back in my time, well before yours, Drake. 2018 was my senior year at Baylor, that football season. And Baylor, Jamison Williams had a pick in the end zone that was overturned. They said he used the ground. He did not. And so they take a pick off the board. Texas scores on the next play, and they win the game by 6 points. Like, this is the kind of margin that we're talking about. It's gone on forever. We've known about it forever in the Big 12. And you would think that maybe going to the SEC where they're not the biggest dog, it won't be there. But here it is. So not only is the country seeing the UT bias and the SEC bias, but these SEC schools are going to start to see the UT bias soon enough if they haven't already.
No doubt. And
they want Texas to be back. They really want Texas to be back.
And this is a losing effort. We can continue to tout the SEC with the stripes, with ESPN, with everybody that wants to make you feel like they're the best and no one else can compare. It's just not really trending in that direction.
This message is brought to you by Prizepicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prizepicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or the regular season, Prizepicks has made it even easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. And now it is playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action more than with Prizepicks. So here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your picks hit, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. For me, I'm about the hot takes. This week on Prizepicks, looking at that NFL slate, I'm actually looking at Lamar Jackson for less than 250 passing yards, and Travis Kelce for more than 70 receiving yards against the Texans. It's fun to predict, easy to play, and with Prizepicks Flex Play, you can still double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes even as quickly as 15 minutes. That's fast in some circles. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prizepicks. Prizepicks, run your game.
Cameron Stewart of Locked On Baylor. From BYU to Baylor to Cincinnati, Arizona, Texas Tech, Kansas State. God bless Kansas State. The Big 12 in basketball is kind of falling apart right now.
It's not in a good spot, or not in a great spot, I should say. There's been questions asked of whether the Big 12 is still the best basketball conference in America. And it feels like a down year right now. It really does. Baylor just lost again on Tuesday. They got really worked by Arizona. They made it close at the end, but they were down 23 in the second half of that game. They keep getting blown out by good teams. And the problem in Arizona will probably get back into the rankings after this, as they deserve to be. But that was a preseason top, 10, 15 team. Yeah. And the problem with the Big 12 this year is kind of that second tier, right? Because the top three are still pretty damn good. Iowa State, Kansas, Houston, still very good. But what's different from years past is that second tier was also very good, and they were getting 4 or 5 seeds in the NCAA tournament. And we're still kind of waiting for who's going to emerge in that second tier. Right now, it's probably Arizona. Baylor's fading after a couple of wins in a row. After that Arizona performance, Texas Tech has not hit their stride really yet. And you look at the SEC, which has a clear cut, kind of upper echelon, Auburn, Tennessee, and Alabama. And then that second tier is still pretty damn good with Florida and Kentucky. In fact, those two are better than anybody in the second tier of the Big 12 right now. Ken Pom still loves the Big 12, but it is, I don't want to say a crisis because it's a one-year thing right now, but I think the SEC has passed the eye test more than the Big 12 has this year.
Yeah, Lenardi currently has 11 Big 10 teams, 11 SEC teams, 7 Big 12 teams in the NCAA postseason. And part of that is usually you'd see 10 Big 12 teams. We've now opened up the path for the SEC and the Big 10 to be much better at hoops. And along that, is this the worst we've seen the Big 12 in recent memory in basketball and the best we've seen the SEC?
It's the deepest we've seen the SEC in a while. Really, this year and last year are the best that we've seen them in quite a while, I would say.
And all it took was John Calipari going away.
Yes,
Kentucky.
Yes. And by the way, he's in the SEC, and his team's not really factoring into this.
Their first 0-5 start in SEC play since 2009.
And there goes maybe Baylor's best win of the season before conference play. So, it's definitely the best the SEC has looked in a long time. And that goes back to even the early years of Calipari, because Kentucky was kind of a one-man band in that league for a while. And in terms of the Big 12, I'll give you one, which is going to sound really weird, but 2021 was not a great year for the Big 12, all told. Obviously, they had the national champion in Baylor, and they were the best team in basketball. Kansas was kind of down, although they were in the rankings the whole year. That's what a down Kansas team looks like. And you had some truly, truly bad teams at the bottom. Oklahoma State was starting to bottom out. Kansas State was terrible. Horrid, just absolutely. I mean, Baylor beat them by like 50 in one game. And so that middle ground wasn't like Tech was kind of on the down slope, but still pretty solid. That would have been Beard's last year, if I'm not mistaken. So it was just like the middle and back end were not as strong as they were the few years leading up to that, and then the few years after that. But that felt like kind of a one-off, and it helped that you had the national champion and had a team that was head and shoulders above everyone else in Baylor. So West Virginia was still pretty solid, but outside of that, you got to go back to like 2017, 2018, when I think us in the Big 12 were realizing that the Big 12 was probably up there with the best in the country, but the national media hadn't really recognized it yet. So that's back when you go back to I call it like the Big 12 banter era. You use that term a lot in soccer, but it was just like all they had was really tough teams with great home court advantages and not necessarily really good teams with great home court advantages, which they've had the last 5 or 6 years.
TCU, Baylor, BYU, I consider to be in that kind of middle pack of, all right, preseason can pretty much guarantee they'll be tournament teams. And now there's a question mark around both tournament and seeding. Baylor should make the tournament for sure. There's a scenario, you lose 3 straight in the Big 12, which many do, where you're going, shoot, we're on the bubble now. And for BYU, same thing, you lose 3 straight. TCU, you lose 3 straight, and you're reeling at that point. Why? How those 3 schools that could have been so good this season, what I don't understand is, and we'll get to the Kansas States and Cincinnatis of the world, but why those 3? I'm not sure how that like you said, that middle pack has gotten so far behind.
Yeah, with TCU, I mean, you just got to wonder what their ceiling is in basketball. Like, I don't know if they ever get into that highest echelon with Jamie Dixon or with anyone else for that matter. It's just it's a tough turnaround. But then again, you would have said that about Baylor 15 years ago. Baylor, I'm still trying to figure out what's going wrong. It feels like just all the talent that like we just all collectively overhyped the talent. They're not getting anything offensively out of their guards right now. They don't have shot creators, shot makers, so they're a damn good offensive rebounding team, but they can't do anything with it. And they've been out muscled so much. And BYU, you think, Denham is the savior there, and they're not as good as they were under Pope last year, which was a team that went out in the first round of the tournament. So you're right. It's just a whole bunch of question marks around these that middle of the pack teams, those middle of the pack teams. I think the biggest thing that you can say about all of them, and what you couldn't say about most Big 12 teams for a long time now, is neither of those three teams are tough. None of them. Like, they don't have any balls, man. We haven't seen it yet. That's why I think Tech is still going to, kind of be at the top of that second rung, because Grant McCaslin coaches some tough MFers, man. And he's done that at every stop. And Scott Drew usually has tough teams too, but it has not, none of those three teams look tough. They don't look Big 12 tough. I'll say that. And that's where you're going to lose games that maybe you shouldn't even be losing. And that's what you got to worry about when you're one of those teams. Like you said, you can mess around and fall into a 3-game losing streak, and they might not be against ranked teams. And you might say, oh, well, 2 of them were on the road. And you can make all the excuses you want. But if you're not tough enough in this league to take on those back end or the bottom half teams night in, night out, then you probably don't deserve to be in the NCAA tournament. And I think 2 of those 3, I think BYU and Baylor will make it, but I'm not saying that. But if you can't do that consistently, then you're not getting very far.
Was John Jacobs the coach that would show old clips of Locked On Baylor to Flo Thamba? That's what I wonder, if they lost their Locked On Baylor guy. Did they lose their spark? Because
did they know that you've moved? That they can still find you?
The old days, it would just be Flo Thamba sitting pregame, eyes closed, listening to the Locked On Baylor in his headphones, getting fired up for the game, and then
Jacobs is a fan, by the way. Jacobs has basically more or less said, I know ball on the air, on the Matt Mosley show on ESPN Central Texas.
Yeah, maybe it was Jacobs, maybe it was Tang. Somebody had the show in Flo Thamba's ears just so Flo Thamba could block a shot into the 4th row and then double dribble off his foot the very next possession and not score a single point for 4 straight games. Before we close it out, Cincinnati, Kansas State.
Remember when he went a game without a rebound?
Yes, or like one board.
That was wild. Anyway,
playing 27 minutes as the starting big man down low. Florentine Thamba. Florentine Thamba. Cincinnati and Kansas State are 2 that stand out as, hey, these guys should be good. And then, oh no, this guy stinks. I don't know what's happening there, man, but that's bad.
Yeah, Cincinnati is the one that's more surprising to me, because I just thought they had the personnel to be better than this. Like, everyone hyped up Jizzle James and Bandago, and obviously Skillings, I think, is their best player. Kansas State, looking back on it, we almost probably should have seen the writing on the wall, but I think we were all hooked in by Coleman Hawkins, which Coleman Hawkins should be a tremendous player. He should be elevating that team to higher than what it is. But that is a mess right now, and I don't think they have the money to buy out Tang. That's what everyone's been telling me in my comment section when I'm like, Tang's going to get fired and come back to Baylor. They don't. It's apparently an $18 million buyout for a basketball coach. That's bad deal, Manhattan, man. That's bad. They're going to have to find some cause because the president doesn't like him.
Is Jerome Tang so Baylor Bears?
Yeah.
Oh no. Strike up another documentary. It's going to lose you a lot of money. Strike it up. Make a new documentary.
Get some licensing.
Joy
he will come back to Baylor. They'll win another national championship with him as an assistant, and he'll get another good head coaching job, and he'll succeed in it. The old Bill Belichick route. Special thank you to Drake for having me on the show. Always love getting more of the Big 12 flavor in there and working in Baylor wherever we can. Let me know what you guys think about the basketball thing. Is this too harsh? Is Baylor taking down this conference a little bit with the way they're playing right now? Let me know in the comments below. Voice your frustrations because I know they're out there and not everyone's talking about it. I'd love to talk about your frustrations with this team and, of course, with the SEC bias and really the UT bias because I'm sticking by that, man. It's not just the SEC bias. That's certainly a real thing, but I think the SEC teams are realizing the UT bias as well. And if you remember that Jamison Houston pass interception in 2018, I think I said the wrong name in there. Let me know down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. It is an honor to bring you a couple episodes every day. We will have the Big 12 Squad Show coming up later today. And then, of course, we will have the transfer portal update to take you into the weekend tomorrow. Thanks for making it your first listen today and every day, and your second and your third or your fourth or fifth listen. And we will see you then on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.